Well, hello, that's me again. Today is February 7th, 2025. It is Friday. My congratulations to all of you with Friday. And what you see in the beginning, the video, is some footage from the Russians who liberate the villages, and number of the villages have been liberated in Kursk region, and number of other, including Dzержinsk, critical towns have been liberated since yesterday, is the booby trap. Booby trap is just basically what is called the spread, растяжка, essentially, or split if you wish. And the whole idea behind this booby trap is that you get people into some kind of the room or basement, and you put this thing there, and when the people try to get out, when they think that the enemy is left, they get killed. So this is a demonstration to you of the training by the NATO of the armed forces of Ukraine. Although they are not armed forces, they are terrorist, a massive terrorist operation, and this is what they do. And these are animals, these are not people, these are the level of the basically atrocity of the Nazi Germany. And if anybody thinks that I'm somehow over dramatize things, and somehow I want to really already kind of be the this nasty Grinch, which undermines the very little reputation which is left of Pentagon and for example US Army, let alone those Chihuahua armies from NATO, here is there actually another guy, and you can look up those things. They are all over the place. Thankfully, there is such thing as the Times of India, who actually, and the Indian mass media, who do their very good job in translating this footage, which very well circulated in Russia. But obviously, the horse from the Western media wouldn't even touch it, because they all sit on the, as we already know, they are state media financed by through the such thing as USAID, and they are nothing more than propaganda outlets who will support any kind of the war crimes. Here's the one of the guys from the armed forces of Ukraine. His name is Lось, which literally means moose actually, and he is talking about what was done to them. He's talking about that they went through the preparation and training in Germany and other places in Europe. As you can see yourself, he is talking about that they were trained by the 1st Cavalry Division of the United States Army. And if you go and look at this and what he's telling you that those people in the United States and the US Army, specifically those trainers from the 1st Cavalry Division, they have no clue about real war. The point which I'm trying to drive home for the last 10 years. And he talks about this openly, and this is not to say that he tries to save his life. Russians do not execute POWs, and especially POWs who essentially he surrendered. And he's talking about the complete demoralization, and that, yeah, those trainers and, those specialists and advisors from 1st Cavalry Division, they knew they basically were performing a show off. It was a fraud. We pretend that we train you, we pretend that we're learning something from you. So he is exposing essentially the incompetence of those people. And just to demonstrate to you to what kind of degree of the idiocy all this about this new war comes to, is obviously you can go and take a look at, for example, Mr. Musk talking to the cadets of the academy, military academy, US military academy at the West Point, and it is laughable. I mean, it's cringeworthy that this guy talks about, guess what? AI, which obviously doesn't exist. We're talking about the advanced algorithms. There is no AI in nature. And of course, drones. This is his level of the understanding of the modern war. And he's talking about communications and obviously pushing this whole narrative, which is essentially the iteration of Tesla, but projected on the military questions, on which he has no clue. And it is really funny that when you look at this and you have have to basically arrive to the conclusion that, yeah, those people do not know what they're talking about, and they don't. And now suddenly we have this guy, well, you probably heard that Mr. Trump was to, visit the security conference in Munich and unveil his plan for stopping the special military operation, essentially. This is not stopping the Ukraine. This is about all stopping Russia. Well, Russians obviously don't buy this BS, and suddenly we know that J.D. Vance will attend it, and none other than Mr. Kellogg, who is Exhibit A of American generals. Most American generals are incompetent hacks, and so they parade themselves constantly in the same way as what this First Cavalry was training, quote unquote, those people from the armed forces of Ukraine. I guess armed forces of Ukraine probably can train U.S. Army, not the other way around, but it is what it is. Here's the deal, somehow they think that if they defeated the third-rate Saddam's army, that makes them specialists in the warfare of the 21st century. It doesn't. And we have Mr. Kellogg now. Well, he is American general, okay? It's a euphemism for people who live in the la-la land, who do not understand what they are dealing with. And so, as Mr. Kellogg states, as you can see yourself, well, what can I say? He is going to be talking about the plan, which doesn't exist. There is no plan on American side. None. Zero. And so he talks about that Trump ready to double down on Russia sanctions. U.S. President Donald Trump is prepared to intensify sanctions on Russia in order to push for an end to the conflict between Kyiv and Moscow, according to his special envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg. Keith Kellogg talks a lot. He obviously never won anything in his life, and I don't think so he even understands what modern C4ISR is. He is so retrograde, and he wouldn't understand it, actually. So, in an interview with the New York Post this week, Kellogg said the current sanctions against Russia are only about a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of how painful the economic pressure can be. Sure, he is obviously slept all his lectures if he attended any kind of lectures on the geopolitics and economics, which serious cadre officers study. But you know what? Yeah, he should go to 11. And yeah, Russians literally laugh at this guy. People do not even understand that Russians, he is a butt of the jokes in Russia. And yeah, why don't he go to 11 and see what happens? So, but evidently not only he doesn't follow the Sun Tzu truism that you have to know thy enemy, he obviously doesn't even understand what United States economically is, and that it's over. It cannot provide any kind of sanctions on Russia, and well, because simply ran out of them. Of course, as I already stated, you can always go to 11. And so he talks about that you could really increase the sanctions, especially the latest sanctions. He stated in an apparent referral to the EU's 15th package of sanctions that target Russian oil production and export. So yeah, they can go there and see what happens. Well, nothing gonna happen to Russia. Everything will happen to actually combine the West and the United States, by the way. Despite the fact that Russia and the United States are essentially down to about $7 billion in mutual trade, which is a pocket change. But then again, you cannot explain to average American general that Wall Street Journal and Wall Street are not real economy and has nothing to do with that. It is all about making money through speculation and fraud, essentially. And that's what it is. But Kellogg still doesn't get the message. Although, let me put it this way, Trump is very sensitive. He definitely doesn't want to go to Munich now and, well, be laughed at. And so, if that hasn't been enough, we see this, the fluffy rhetoric, but there is the method to this rhetoric. First, we obviously we have this situation that all this earth metals thing is nothing but a joke. And so Zelensky admits Ukraine doesn't control rare earths Trump wants. U.S. aid should be offered to Kyiv only in return for access to natural resources, U.S. President Donald Trump has proposed. And so, well, there's a problem, as I already stated, even in the headline here, that, yeah, those rare earth minerals are controlled by Russia. And we have enough rare earth minerals, but Russia has occupied our land since 2014, Zelensky reported in Kyiv on Tuesday. We are open to them being developed by our partners who help us defend the land, push back the enemy with their weapons, presence, and sanctions. And this is absolutely fair. So, yeah, people live in La La Land. They do not understand really what is going on. And if there were some interesting signs of maybe dawning realization on somebody, at least in Trump administration, which is it's a hodgepodge combination of different people, and as it's have been stated by me on so many occasions. In terms of national security and foreign policy, United States is not salvageable. It needs to completely actually remove those elites who deal with this, because it is a fraud shyster field by incompetent and illiterate people, which most of the US diplomats and military are, and they constantly, put people into this framework or frame of mind that somehow United States can do it all. It can't. It cannot do even, the small bits or parts of what they think they can do. And as the result, here are the news which are very important. And even this, it's human herpes between me and you, and it's what British journals and British media are. And so we have now suddenly this. Wow, this is about moving Rammstein. And what is Rammstein? You have to understand what Rammstein format is. Rammstein obviously being the huge air and military base in Germany. This is where all those NATO big shots meet, and some of them are there on the permanent basis, and this is where they were dealing with essentially not just running the military aid for Ukraine, but operational planning, which of course most of them are, they are not good at operational planning, okay? Simple as that. And look at this. Suddenly even Telegraph, this, and not only Telegraph, there are all kinds of British media reporting on this, that UK to take over leadership of Ukraine defense group from US. And so, look at the John Healy dude. He looks like a Nosferatu and from the 20th horror movie. And so, next week, John Healy, the defense secretary, will convene the 26th Ukraine Defense Contact Group in Brussels. It will be the first time the UK has led the group after it was instructed by the Americans to take the charge of enhancing Ukraine's security within NATO. So they talk about the fight against Vladimir Putin's illegal invasion and things like that. You cannot save United Kingdom anymore. It's over for them as the country. Yes, I mean it like as a nation. But the point is that there is a reason why United States instructed those people, because evidently some people in Trump administration, while obviously trying to hide the catastrophe, geopolitical catastrophe and defeat United States sustained in Ukraine and in Europe, and there is no plan, and there will be no plan, of negotiations with Russia, because Russians will just simply dictate conditions. But this is important because somebody has to hold the bag, and United Kingdom is the perfect candidate for that, especially when you consider what they did in Kursk Oblast, which as of yesterday there were 57,860 KIAs and 337 tanks, apart from hundreds of other vehicles. They killed their combined arms army in Kursk, and you cannot explain to those people 44 weeks in Sandhurst, coming there with the degrees like history, like political science, or languages. Can you imagine preparing 44 weeks a cadre officer who then goes to the King's College and is, I don't know what they teach there. So if U.S. generals are incompetent, United Kingdom or, British Army, it's a joke. They have a joke of the military education, they have a joke of the officer corps, but people of the old school, old British school, so to speak, when Britain did matter. You can go back to the times of the Cold War 1.0 and look up what was the army of the Rhine, or British army. It was the 50,000 plus, serious combined arms army, which together with the NATO armies was supposed to, well, die pretty much against the hypothetical Soviet assault on, on the Rhine and then further towards the Atlantic Ocean, but they were serious force. They were well trained. They had a serious officer corps which was trained well. And then, of course, you have to remember, in the end, granted, barely, United Kingdom defeated the Argentines in Falkland conflict, and granted that having a very bloody nose after that, but still, the victory is the victory. They attained their political objectives. And but something happened. It's just they completely started to go down there and degenerated into this joke. I mean, they have these people with those old funny titles, British titles, allegedly aristocracy, and look at Mr. Healy. He looks, pardon my French, inbred. And what can I say? That's what they are today. But old guard, old people of, so to speak, of the old generation, they actually go out and begin to speak about the real tangibles. And this is old British old school. And I have to actually address this issue today because many people, including Colonel Daniel Davis, they had the Commodore Steve Jeremy of the Royal Navy talking about the fact that that's what he was talking about. And what he was talking about is this. He wrote in the usually pretty dubious source of the responsible statecraft of Quincy Institute, run by Andrew Basevich, but here was there on January 29th, a week ago. He was talking about that right now NATO could not win a war with Russia, and everybody is surprised that somehow, well, the British guy comes out and says things that, yeah, you know what, yeah, NATO cannot win the conventional war with Russia. We're not talking about nuclear war because after that the Europe will cease to exist. And so, he talks about that in 2024, reflecting a popular Western belief, former Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said NATO is the most powerful and successful alliance in history. Yet just 2 years earlier, in 2022, after a 15-year campaign, NATO was defeated by the Taliban Iraq group of poorly armed insurgents. Yeah, it was, and there's no other way around it. And so, and he is correct, making this actually proper reference, which is absolutely true. Of course, NATO was never the most powerful military alliance in history. That accolade surely goes to the World War II allies, the US, Russia, Britain, and Commonwealth nations. Absolutely correct. And this is the old British, military wisdom talking. And guess what? It also talks about the class of the person who talks about it. And I can only applaud to Mr. Jeremy, the Commodore Jeremy, saying that, yeah, this is, well, you can say that that's the Britain we lost, because obviously what we have nowadays coming out of London is just absolute stupefying stupidity. And so he talks about that the doomsday NATO-Russia war scenario is the defining way to explore this question. Amateurs talk tactics, professionals study logistics. Absolutely. And that is why I want to address a little bit the issue of the trolls, which of course follow me and follow people like Scott, Ritter, Garland, Nixon, and Larry Johnson, who constantly get into all kinds of the tactical minutiae, and they pretend that they understand what is going on, for example, a special military operation. They all operate from the same beaten to death little cliches, which have nothing to do with the military science or, real war. But, so what I want to say, he is correct, and Commodore Steve Jeremy, and I'm talking about this constantly. Yeah, don't look at the tactical minutia. Don't look at some village being liberated or captured or what have you. Look at the operational strategic level and look at the grand strategy level. But of course, very many people still struggle to do this, and others are just plain trolls. And here where I have to disagree with Steve Jeremy, I mean, he is correct in many respects. And he is not, he's talking about that when listing the number of the factors which make NATO victory impossible. In fact, NATO will be defeated, God forbid, if they decide to commit suicide by Russia. And he's talking about that you have to move those 473,000 US Army if there is even a chance of anything, and this is under 1/3 of the current Russian army. It is not the overwhelming majority of American equipment and logistics would have to travel by sea. And here he talks about being himself former mine and warfare officer and obviously having a good understanding of the anti-submarine warfare operations. He is even here, and again, I applaud. It's a wonderful article because it's really his all critical points, you know, so to speak. But here is where his mistake is. And he's talking about all those Atlantic shipping lanes of communications. And there, they would be vulnerable to Russian submarine-launched torpedoes and mines. As a former underwater warfare specialist, I do not believe that NATO now has the scale of anti-submarine or mine warfare forces needed to protect Europe's sea lines of communications. He is absolutely correct, except for what is actually highlighted in yellow. Why he is incorrect? Well, let me explain. I will say it up front and then I will elaborate. Russian submarines will not launch torpedoes. Why would you put yourself into the range of it between 50 to 80 kilometers, depending on the type of the torpedo, which will be within the actually anti-submarine warfare escorts of those convoys when. Let me remind you. Remember, a couple of years ago, I showed you. This was calculated, essentially, what would happen if 5 submarines of Russian Northern Fleet. Don't forget, Russians can maneuver with forces and then can basically move some forces from even Pacific Ocean if it need be. God forbid we get into this point that Russians have to sink everything which goes over the shipping lanes communications in Atlantic Ocean. But look at this. Those red circles are the range of 800 kilometers. This is the range, which is still already outdated, of roughly the submarine launch 3M54 anti-shipping missiles and P-800 Onyx. Even single circle of that with the 800 kilometer range, it is the area of 2 million square kilometers, which will require an enormous submarine, anti-submarine operation by the patrol aviation. And that's not good because it is impossible to detect submarines which move constantly, and those circles will be moving, but they will completely block any kind of the movement on those of those escorts, and Russians not gonna be using torpedoes, albeit they will be using mines. The Russians will be using obviously anti-shipping missiles with the ranges. Here we have the range for 800 kilometers, but look what a single Yasin class, which is Project 885 submarine, does with the Zircon. As you know, the range of Zircon is at least 1500 kilometers. And here it is. Single Yasin class submarine, which puts itself in the middle of the Northern Atlantic. That's pretty much what you have to know. And it will carry 32 of those missiles. So yeah, that's not a good idea to go against this. And this is just one sub. Obviously, Russians have way more than that. And just to demonstrate to you the lack of any feasibility, tactical or operational, of to resupply anybody, even if it would be resupplied, it wouldn't make any difference because as you have to go and read the Commodore's Jeremy article. It's as I already stated, it's a good article. But here we have even this guy. So, well, he is a classic like an American general, the guy has no clue actually what he's talking about. But here is Mr. Chris Osborne. You know, it was yesterday, and I will tell you who Chris Osborne is, but here it is. Russia's submarine fleet summed up simply in 4 words. And he talks about that. 4 words to threat to the US Navy. Russia's surface navy has struggled in Ukraine war. I have no idea what he's talking about, but its submarine fleet remains a potent force. Key points in summary. With 63 submarines, including the advanced Yasin AM class, Moscow is pushing ahead with a stealthy long-range threats. Well, at least he admits this, but the question is, of course, he again drinks from the pool, or cesspool rather, of the Ukrainian propaganda, which you would expect. But look at this, who this guy is when he continues to spin propaganda from Ukraine. Here's his CV. My God, it's unbelievable. So the guy, actually, he was a CNN anchor, if no less. And for some reason, he talks about, and he is presented because he was hanging around Pentagon as a military expert. Military expert he is not. Look at this. He has a Bachelor's of Arts in English and Political Science, and he has a Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, a master's degree in Comparative Literature. So there you go. How the hell? Well, people will say, well, he is the guy who usually is the civilian person who hangs around the smoking rooms where professionals speak. He listens to them and then, you know, collects rumors and pretends that he is somehow a military expert. He is not, and he wouldn't understand even basic operational things which are related to the actually otherwise very serious situation with their escorts and convoys, which supposed to actually resupply Europe and European NATO in case of the war with Russia, conventional war. Most of them will never make it, it's obviously, if not all of them. And this is the simple operational fact. And it's just so to speak, how to put it, one of the facets of the situation with the, for example, special military operation, that we have this lady, she's an exhibit A of the radical mediocrity and colorless. So Merkel says to Russians that we cannot, you know, prevent Russian victory in the conflict in Ukraine. So and she was stating this at the Designed newspaper event in Germany. So this is, if anybody, and those people who constantly accuse me of hating Europe, I don't hate Europe. I'm just saying that Russia has no business there. There is nobody there to talk there. So. And if that hasn't been enough, now we have a little bit of the data from the front lines. Look at this. There's, as you all know, there were attempts on the counteroffensive, which essentially was a recon in force by 2 battalion groups, which have been annihilated by Russians yesterday in Kursk area. And as you can see yourself, the dynamics of the losses, well, it's definitely decreasing for a simple reason. There are fewer and fewer people for Russians to kill. And armed forces of Ukraine are, well, let me show you something. We go to our good friend Marat Khairulin, and this is 2 days ago. So here is Kupiansk area in the better resolution. As you can see yourself, Russians already on the other side of the Oskol River. And they are also in Kupiansk. And well, how to put it? There is nothing really in the future for the armed forces of Ukraine there, because Russians already in Kharkov area and Dnipropetrovsk, and as I stated on the number of occasions, Russians operated diversionary recon groups of Russians. They operate in already on the western bank of the Dnieper River. So make your own conclusions what is going on, but yeah, it's just a matter of time, and Russians are in no rush, because obviously, well, there's nothing to talk about with the United States here. Trump continues to believe in, you know, maybe somebody tells him to stop this BS, but I don't think so. He himself is capable of doing this, because he is too narcissistic and too self-centered. And in conclusion, for those people who still ask the questions, oh, where do you get your data? And yeah, your Russian propaganda. Sure, if you don't believe it, it's fine, just don't consider those things. But here is the yesterday that none other than the chairman of the Military Scientific Committee of the Russian Armed Forces, Deputy Chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, Colonel General Vasily Trushin, stated about the growing effectiveness of the Russian air defense systems. And he noted that thanks to the work of Russian scientists and engineers, it was possible to achieve a significant breakthrough in the effectiveness of high-precision weapons, which, despite the active use of electronic warfare by the enemy, today amounts to no less than 90% effectiveness. No less than 90% effectiveness of Russian air defense system. So, and that's pretty much the number, which is shocking for Pentagon. It is shocking for NATO systems. And what can I say? You are free to believe whatever you want, but realities on the ground speak the volumes. And the fact that now Mr. Kellogg wants to impose new sanctions on Russia and turn them to 11 maybe. So sure, see what happens. And in conclusion, clarification about the, not clarification, the new data. We know now about the thing which I spoke about, Russian-Indian contract for anti-shipping missile. Now we can see ourselves through this photo, which is more detailed and high quality, that actually the contract is for the anti-shipping missiles for the Indian submarines. And the Indian submarines, Indians operate the Kilo class and the improved Kilo class missiles, submarines, and that means that those missiles will be caliber or the 3M54, and we do not know if it is the export version because of the 300-kilometer range capped by the regime of the non-proliferation of the missile technologies. But considering level of Russian and Indian cooperation, who knows, they might get them 3M54 sort of export version, the same as the Onyx, which is Yahant. It's essentially the degraded electronically still very potent anti-shipping missile. And I don't know, we'll have to wait and see, but at least we know that these are primarily for the submarines, and that means if they were talking about the diesel submarines, that will be this 3M54 possibly export version of the anti-shipping missiles. And that's what I wanted to make the update for you guys. And this is pretty much it for today. And as always, in conclusion, guys, I want to express my profound gratitude for my wonderful patrons who support me and allow me to do what I'm doing. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel, and those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. And that will be it for today, guys, and have a nice weekend coming, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.